When I begin to tell my story, the first thing I want is to lighten the burden on my heart. This is my story, my life, told in my own words. I never intended to write a story, but there are some wounds that only grow deeper when kept silent. I believed I was a fortunate woman, married to a hardworking and faithful husband who worked in a foreign country to support our home. We had been married for several years, and despite the distance, our relationship felt strong to me. We spoke every day, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, but always promising each other that this distance was only temporary. My husband worked in another country. I lived here, first in my parents' home and then in our small house, surviving on his memories. He had told me that a very simple, mute and deaf woman lived in his house there, working as a cleaner. I never gave it much thought because I trusted my husband. Trust is something that can blind a person. I accepted every explanation he gave, and whenever even a small doubt crept into my heart, I convinced myself that I was thinking wrongly. Then one day, suddenly, a thought came to my mind: why not go to my husband without telling him? It would be a surprise for both of us. I imagined he would be overjoyed to see me, and I longed to see that smile on his face that I had been waiting for so long. I told no one, didn't even call him. I quietly arranged my journey. Perhaps this decision was made out of love, and perhaps out of innocence. When I arrived there, my heart was beating very fast. As I opened the door to the house, everything was silent. An unusual silence, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Only a faint sound was coming from one room. I had been told that the mute, deaf maid lived in the house and that she was there at that time as well. I placed my bag aside and slowly walked inside. In my mind, there was only one image: that my husband would be shocked and happy to see me. I went straight toward his room. As soon as I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was clothes scattered around. They were not mine. They belonged to another woman. My heart stopped for a moment. I thought maybe I was misunderstanding, maybe they belonged to a guest, or perhaps there was some other explanation. I tried to reassure myself when suddenly I heard a voice from behind me. That voice belonged to the same mute, deaf maid. And she was speaking, clearly speaking. In that moment, I lost my senses. My body went numb. Only one question echoed in my mind: the woman who was mute and deaf, how was she speaking? My breathing became heavy. When I turned around, she was standing there, and there was a strange hardness in her eyes. What she said was no less than poison for me. She said, "Your husband and my daughter have an illicit relationship. They have married each other." Tears filled my eyes instantly. The ground slipped from beneath my feet. I felt like I would collapse. Her words didn't just enter my ears, they pierced straight into my heart. I wanted to scream, but my voice was stuck in my throat. In that moment, it felt as if my entire life had been built on a lie. And this is where that part of my story begins, where trust starts to shatter, and love turns into a painful test. In that moment, I felt as if time had stopped breathing with me. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, and my heart louder than everything else around me. I stood there, frozen, staring at the woman who was supposed to be mute and deaf, yet had just spoken words sharp enough to cut my soul into pieces. My mind refused to accept what my ears had heard. I wanted to believe that I was imagining it, that exhaustion from travel was playing tricks on me. But her eyes did not lie. They carried a bitterness that only years of hidden pain can create. She looked at me without fear, without shame, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Slowly, she told me everything. She said she had pretended to be mute and deaf because that was the only way she could survive in that house. She said my husband brought her and her daughter there, promising protection, promising respect, but turning their lives into silent prisons. Her daughter, she said, was forced into a relationship that should never have happened. My hands began to tremble. I pressed them together, trying to hold myself upright, trying not to fall apart right there on the floor of the room that once felt like my home. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to listen. Every word felt like another stone placed on my chest. She told me that my husband had married her daughter in secret, far away from family, far away from witnesses. A marriage hidden in darkness, built on lies. I felt my knees weaken. I leaned against the wall, afraid that if I took one more step, I would collapse completely. All those late-night phone calls, all those excuses, all those moments when he said he was tired from work, suddenly, everything began to make sense in the most painful way. I walked deeper into the room, my eyes scanning everything with new awareness. The woman's clothes were not the only proof anymore. There were small things, another pillow, unfamiliar perfume, little signs I had ignored because I never imagined betrayal could live so comfortably beside love. My chest burned as if someone had lit a fire inside me. I wanted to scream his name, to demand answers, to break everything that reminded me of him. But he was not there. And somehow, that absence hurt even more. When he finally came home, I was sitting silently, my eyes dry but my soul drowning. He froze when he saw me. For a second, I saw fear on his face, real fear. He tried to smile, tried to act surprised, asked me why I hadn't told him I was coming. His voice sounded strange to me, like it belonged to a stranger wearing my husband's face. I stood up slowly and asked him one simple question: who is she? My voice did not shake, even though my heart was breaking. He denied everything at first. He laughed nervously, said I was misunderstanding, said the woman was lying, said she was mentally unstable. He spoke quickly, desperately, like someone running from the truth. Then I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I had seen everything. I told him I knew about the marriage. That was the moment his silence confessed more than his words ever could. His shoulders dropped, his eyes avoided mine, and the truth stood naked between us. He begged me to forgive him. He said it was a mistake, a weakness, a moment that went too far. He promised it meant nothing. But how can a second marriage mean nothing? How can another woman's ruined life be called a mistake? I realized then that the man standing in front of me was not the man I had married. The man I loved existed only in my memories, not in reality. That night, I did not sleep. I packed my bag slowly, every folded cloth carrying a memory, every zipper closing another chapter of my life. My tears fell quietly, not because I was weak, but because I was finally accepting the truth. In the morning, I left without looking back. The journey back felt longer than my journey there, heavier with loss but lighter with clarity. It took time, but I chose myself. I filed for divorce, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. I knew that staying would kill me slowly, piece by piece. Letting go hurt, but holding on would have destroyed me completely. This was not the end of my story, only the end of a lie I once called love. And from here, my real struggle began. After the divorce papers were filed, people assumed my pain would slowly fade. They thought the hardest part was over, that once a woman leaves a cheating husband, she becomes free. But no one talks about the silence that comes after. A silence so loud it keeps you awake at night. I returned to my country, to my old room, to familiar walls that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt right. I was no longer the woman who had left home full of love and hope. I had come back carrying broken trust and unanswered questions. The days were the hardest. At night, I could at least cry without being seen. During the day, I had to pretend to be strong. Relatives whispered, neighbors judged, and friends asked careful questions, afraid they might reopen wounds. Some people blamed me without saying it out loud. They said maybe I didn't take enough care of him, maybe long-distance marriages are bound to fail. Their words hurt, but not as much as the fact that once, I had asked myself the same questions. I kept wondering what I did wrong, where I fell short, how my love was not enough. There were nights when memories attacked me without warning. His laughter, his voice, the way he promised a future together. I remembered how I used to wait for his calls, how I defended him whenever someone doubted him. I felt foolish, betrayed by my own loyalty. Trust, once broken, does not shatter loudly, it collapses quietly, leaving sharp pieces everywhere. Even when you try to walk away, those pieces cut your feet. One day, I received a message from him. Just a simple "How are you?" Seeing his name on my phone made my hands shake. For a moment, I wanted to reply. I wanted to ask why. Why he chose lies over honesty, why he destroyed so many lives without hesitation. But I didn't answer. I realized that closure does not always come from the person who hurt you. Sometimes, it comes from choosing silence over another wound. Slowly, I began to notice changes within myself. I started speaking more honestly, with myself first. I admitted that I was angry. Angry at him, angry at fate, angry at the years I lost believing in something false. I allowed myself to feel that anger instead of hiding it behind patience. I learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and healing does not mean pretending nothing happened. Healing means facing the pain until it no longer controls you. I began rebuilding my life in small ways. I woke up early, went for long walks, and let the morning air remind me that life still moves forward. I focused on work, on things I had once postponed because my world revolved around him. I rediscovered parts of myself I had abandoned, my strength, my voice, my ability to stand alone. There were days I failed, days I cried again, days I felt weak. But even weakness became a step forward, because I no longer ran from it. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. I met the daughter of that woman again, not in person, but through a message. She found me through someone we both knew. She apologized to me, even though she owed me nothing. She told me her story, how she was trapped, manipulated, and silenced. As I read her words, I realized that we were both victims of the same man, just in different ways. My heart softened, not with forgiveness for him, but with understanding for her. Pain connects people in strange ways. That conversation changed something inside me. I stopped seeing myself only as a betrayed wife. I began to see myself as a survivor. I understood that my worth was not reduced because someone failed to value it. Love that requires blindness is not love, it is sacrifice without dignity. I promised myself that I would never again lose my voice to keep someone else comfortable. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I will love again, or if I will ever trust the same way. But I know this, I walked away when it would have been easier to stay and suffer silently. I chose truth over illusion. And that choice, painful as it was, saved me. This was the chapter where I learned to stand on my own. The next part of my story is about how I learned to live again, not as someone's wife, but as myself. Learning to live again did not happen in one day. It was a slow, uneven journey, filled with small victories and sudden breakdowns. Some mornings I woke up feeling lighter, almost hopeful, and some nights I cried myself to sleep without fully understanding why. Healing, I learned, is not a straight line. It moves forward, then pulls you back, just to remind you how deep the wound once was. But this time I was not running from the pain. I was walking through it. I started setting boundaries, something I had never truly done before. I stopped explaining myself to people who were only curious, not concerned. I stopped answering questions that felt like accusations. My story was no longer public property. I realized that not everyone deserves access to your pain. Protecting my peace became more important than proving my innocence. This decision alone gave me a strange kind of strength. There were moments when loneliness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. Weddings, family gatherings, even simple conversations triggered an ache in my chest. People spoke about marriage as if it were the ultimate success, and I sat there smiling, feeling like a failure in their eyes. But slowly, I began to challenge that belief. I asked myself, was staying in a lie really a success? Or was choosing dignity the real achievement? The answer came quietly, but firmly. I invested my time in learning. I read books about emotional healing, listened to stories of other women who had survived betrayal, and found comfort in knowing I was not alone. Their words felt like hands reaching out in the dark, reminding me that pain shared becomes lighter. I also began writing, pages and pages that no one else would read. Writing became my safe place, where I could be honest without fear of judgment. Every sentence helped me breathe again. One day, I caught my reflection in the mirror and noticed something different. The sadness was still there, but it no longer defined my entire face. There was resilience in my eyes, a quiet determination. I smiled at myself for the first time in a long while, not because everything was perfect, but because I had survived what I thought would destroy me. That smile felt like a promise to myself. People from my past slowly faded away, and new connections formed naturally. Some were brief, some meaningful, but none were forced. I learned to enjoy my own company, to sit in silence without feeling empty. Solitude stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like peace. I cooked meals just for myself, took myself out for walks, celebrated my own small achievements. These acts, though simple, rebuilt my confidence brick by brick. Occasionally, memories of my ex-husband returned, but they no longer carried the same power. I no longer wondered if he missed me or regretted his choices. His journey was no longer tied to mine. I understood that closure does not come from answers, it comes from acceptance. I accepted that some people never explain their cruelty, and some wounds never get apologies. And that was okay. The most important lesson I learned during this time was about love. Love is not supposed to make you smaller, quieter, or invisible. Love does not ask you to doubt your worth or tolerate disrespect. True love begins with honesty, and without it, everything else is just a performance. I promised myself that if love ever came back into my life, it would find me whole, not broken and begging. This phase of my life taught me patience, with myself, with time, with the healing process. I stopped rushing my recovery and allowed myself to grow at my own pace. I was no longer defined by what was done to me, but by how I chose to rise after it. And just when I began to feel truly steady on my feet, life tested me again, this time in a way I did not expect. I thought I had already faced the worst that life could offer me. Betrayal, loss, loneliness, nothing, I believed, could shake me the same way again. But life has a strange way of testing you just when you begin to feel strong. The test did not come loudly or dramatically. It came quietly, wrapped in familiarity, carrying the weight of my past. One afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my heart pushed me to answer. It was his sister. Hearing her voice after so long felt unreal, like opening a door I had sealed with effort and pain. She spoke gently, almost carefully, and told me that my ex-husband was unwell. She said he wanted to talk to me, that he had something important to say. For a moment, my chest tightened. Old emotions stirred, threatening to rise again. But I reminded myself how far I had come. I did not respond immediately. I took my time. That alone showed me how much I had changed. The woman I once was would have rushed, worried, and sacrificed her own peace. This time, I asked myself a simple question: do I owe him access to my healing? The answer was no. Still, after days of reflection, I agreed to meet, not for him, but for myself. I wanted to see if I truly was free from the hold he once had on me. When I saw him, I felt nothing like I expected. No anger, no longing, just distance. He looked older, tired, worn down by his own choices. He apologized again and again, his words heavy with regret. He said he had lost everything, that his life was empty without me. I listened calmly, without interruption. His pain was real, but it no longer ruled me. I realized something powerful in that moment: regret does not equal change, and apology does not erase damage. He asked for forgiveness, not just forgiveness, but another chance. That was the moment of truth. I looked at him and felt compassion, but not love. I told him that forgiving him did not mean returning to him. I told him that some doors close forever, not out of hatred, but out of self-respect. As I spoke, I felt a strange peace settle inside me. Saying no had never felt so right. After that meeting, I cried, but not because I was weak. I cried because I was finally letting go of the last thread tying me to my past. I mourned the life I thought I would have, the future I once planned so carefully. But I also honored the woman I had become. She was stronger than I ever imagined. Soon after, another unexpected moment arrived. The woman who once exposed the truth, the mother who had pretended to be mute and deaf, reached out to me. She thanked me for leaving, for breaking the silence. My departure had given her and her daughter the courage to leave as well. They had started over, far away from him. Hearing this filled my heart with something close to relief. Pain, when faced, can sometimes save others too. That realization changed how I viewed my story. It was no longer just about betrayal and loss. It became a story of truth, courage, and consequences. I understood that walking away had not only saved me, it had ended a cycle of cruelty. Sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is refuse to stay in a place where their soul is slowly dying. I no longer feared my past. It had shaped me, but it did not define me. I stood stronger, clearer, and more grounded than ever before. And in that clarity, something new quietly entered my life, not love yet, not romance, but hope. This part of my journey taught me that closure does not come from going back. It comes from choosing forward, even when the past begs you to return. One final chapter remains, the chapter where true love reveals its real meaning. For a long time, I believed true love was something that came from another person. A husband, a partner, someone who promised forever. But as my life slowly settled into calm, I began to understand that true love often arrives in a different form, quiet, patient, and unexpected. It does not rush in with grand promises. It simply stays. Hope entered my life through ordinary days. Through mornings where I woke up without heaviness in my chest. Through evenings where silence felt comforting instead of lonely. I had rebuilt my routines, my confidence, and my sense of self. I no longer measured my worth by someone else's presence. And that, I think, is when life decided I was ready for something new. I met him through work. There was nothing dramatic about our first meeting. No instant spark, no butterflies. Just a simple conversation, respectful and calm. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words carried honesty. At first, I kept my distance. My heart had learned caution. I was not looking for love, I was protecting my peace. Over time, our conversations became regular. He never pushed, never asked questions that crossed my boundaries. He did not try to fix me or save me. He simply treated me like a complete human being. That alone felt unfamiliar and safe. Slowly, I realized that trust was returning, not because I forced it, but because it was being earned. One day, I told him my story. Not the dramatic version, not the victim version, just the truth. I watched his reaction carefully, ready to pull away if I saw pity or judgment. But he did neither. He respected my silence where I needed it and my words where I chose to speak. He told me that my past did not reduce my value. Hearing that from someone else was comforting, but believing it myself was the real victory. This time, love did not ask me to disappear. It did not demand sacrifice or silence. It allowed me to be exactly who I was, healed in some places, still healing in others. I learned that real love does not hurt. It challenges you to grow, but it never makes you feel small. It does not thrive on control or secrets. It breathes in honesty. I did not rush into anything. I took my time, listened to my instincts, and honored my fears without letting them rule me. He understood that love after betrayal moves slowly. And instead of being offended, he walked beside me at my pace. That patience felt like respect, and respect felt like love. I realized then that true love is not about being chosen, it is about being valued. It is not about grand gestures, it is about consistency. It is found in safety, not obsession. And most importantly, true love begins when you no longer need it to complete you. Looking back, I no longer curse my past. As painful as it was, it taught me lessons I could not have learned otherwise. It taught me self-worth, boundaries, and the courage to walk away. Without that darkness, I might never have recognized healthy love when it appeared. I do not know what the future holds with this new chapter. But for the first time, I am not afraid. Whether love stays or leaves, I know I will survive. I know who I am now. And that knowledge is my greatest strength. Only one part remains, the ending, where I finally define what true love really means to me. When I look back at my journey, I no longer see it as a story of betrayal. I see it as a story of awakening. What once felt like the end of my life was actually the beginning of my truth. Pain did not come to destroy me, it came to strip away the lies I was living in. And in that emptiness, I finally found myself. For a long time, I thought true love meant loyalty at any cost, silence in the name of patience, and endurance in the name of marriage. I believed a good woman is the one who forgives everything and asks for nothing. But life taught me differently. True love does not ask you to break yourself to keep someone else whole. It does not grow in fear or survive on secrets. True love stands in the light, even when the truth is uncomfortable. I used to blame myself for not seeing the signs earlier. I questioned my intelligence, my instincts, my worth. But now I understand that trust is not a weakness. Loving deeply is not a mistake. The real mistake is staying where respect has ended. Walking away was not failure, it was courage. And choosing myself was the bravest act of love I ever performed. Today, I define true love as peace. Peace in my heart. Peace in my choices. Peace in knowing that I will never again accept less than I deserve. True love is waking up without fear, speaking without hesitation, and living without pretending. It is feeling safe, valued, and seen, not because someone owns you, but because they respect you. If love stays in my life, it will walk beside me, not ahead of me, not behind me. It will not silence my voice or question my worth. And if love ever leaves, it will not take my identity with it. Because I am whole on my own. That is the greatest lesson my story gave me. To every woman who is silently suffering, who is doubting her reality, who is choosing pain over loneliness, I want to say this: your life is bigger than your fear. Your worth is not defined by someone else's loyalty. And leaving does not mean you failed. Sometimes, leaving means you finally chose to live. This is not a fairy tale with a perfect ending. This is a real story, with scars and strength, loss and growth. And if there is one truth I hold close now, it is this: true love begins the moment you refuse to abandon yourself. This is my story. Not of heartbreak, but of self-respect, healing, and real love.